this. Oh God, I almost feel like you're now going to hear literally a real life case study of what Simon has just been talking about. I'm also really disappointed because my starting line was that I had the most or the longest title for all of the sessions, but it's been trumped because this isn't as long. But what nobody wins a prize for here today is, of course, what the unprecedented change was. It was, of course, the global pandemic in 2020. Literally a time when the world was closed. It also was the time I started my level 7 apprenticeship in sales leadership, which was good. So really today I'm going to talk about what I learned from that, how it really helped me, and God, it did help me in those 2 years of the pandemic. What I did to keep my Salesforce engaged, or not, as some cases, so I'll also talk about that. CWT is the company I work for. We are a global business travel management company. So therein lies the title already. We work in travel. We are around, I personally, led a sales team of 9 people, all based in the UK. And we were an $18 billion revenue company globally. We had around 18,000 employees. And obviously, our job is moving companies and people and connecting people and governments globally in around 145 countries. And what else? Well, we processed around 23 billion transactions. So for clarity there, a transaction really is when we book a trip. So when anyone books their business travel with us, it's a transaction. And our commercial model is that we charge a transaction fee. So it's almost like a pay-as-you-go model. Every time you book travel, we charged a fee. So, of course, what happened when the world stopped? The transaction fee stopped. Literally, our revenue stopped. And just to give you a bit more context on that, so in the 2 years during the pandemic, 62 million jobs were lost in travel and tourism. CWT, my company, went from 18,000 to 12,000 employees. A business travel didn't really restart. So everything else had a bit of a resurgence after the lockdown. Ours didn't. And as you can imagine, for all the reasons, corporates were not prepared to take the risk for their employees to go on a business trip. There was different regulations per country. There was vaccinations. Some people were vaccinated, some weren't. And I think, for most of you, if you travelled for yourselves in leisure, it was a nightmare. The complexities were a nightmare. So it never really restarted for us during that whole 2 years. So, of course, what did we do when it first started as an organisation? Well, first of all, I think we all, if we think back, let's face it, and actually everybody's brains work like this, we all said it was short term. So that first lockdown, we all went, it's only going to be a couple of months, everything will be back to normal. And actually, because I think that's how our brains cope. If I think about us, me personally, this weekend I've got dinner with friends, I've got my stuff organised at Christmas, next year I've got holidays booked. And all of a sudden it was like there's nothing. Like literally our brains couldn't cope with the thought of there is nothing. So we all said it's only going to be a couple of months. And I think that's true for most organisations, CWT included. We went, it's going to be short term. So, of course, in the short term, we did things like no merit increase. We all took, including myself, voluntary pay cuts of up to 10 to 15%. Salespeople, unfortunately, had all of their commissions paused. So even any business they won in 2019 on hold. And of course, globally, we took advantage of all of the furlough schemes that were on offer. So we had, pretty much over 60% of our employees on a furlough scheme. Ironically, this quote you see behind me was from the very first book I read as part of my research for my very first assignment, which was Innovation in Sales Leadership. And it was as at the time that the global pandemic was coming over to Europe, and we realised it was going to be global. And of course, it still stands today that you see that, we're still having financial crisis and geopolitical crisis. The guys that wrote the book, gosh, could they see the future or what? But little did we know, I think with the global pandemic, little did we know that when it hit, it really would transform the way we work forever. But hopefully today, obviously the global pandemic is such an unprecedented change, but the things, as I said, the things I've learned about change and how to lead through change it happens in work all the time. There's restructure. And again, as human beings, we're really not very good with dealing with change. It's for some people, it's a longer process. Some people do adapt to move on. But yeah, we always have to manage through that change. And never is that more relevant when we're in a workplace. So this is my lovely team. I mentioned at the beginning, 2 years ago, I led a team. Actually, my boss is in there as well. So there's more than 9 people. So I led a team of 9 salespeople, all based in the UK. But by December 2020, it was really clear that we would have to take drastic action as an organisation. Unfortunately, being a global organisation, being in the UK and in the US, if you work for an organisation, you may probably all know, the action is more drastic because it's much easier to make people redundant in those 2 countries. So you can see in December 2020, we put over 200 people into the consultation process within the UK. All 9 of my team went into consultation. So they were all told just before Christmas. So not very nice for them. And then in February, I actually made 6 of those people redundant. So I was only left with 3. So of course, an absolutely devastating time for the 6 individuals that we lost. Equally, for the 3 individuals that I had left, that's where I had to understand how would I keep them engaged? What would I do moving forward? Because they themselves had been in the consultation process. So they themselves had spent 8 weeks thinking, will I have a job? At the same time, so again, I can't really describe to you working in travel or business travel, everything was imploding working at the company. So we were having restructures all over the place. We were having board members resign to save money. So at the same time, I also concurrently, we restructured. I took over the team in Benelux, which is Belgium, Netherlands and Luxembourg. So I actually, as I made 6 people redundant, I inherited another 3 people in that team. And I had to bring them into the team on the 3 people that were remaining. So what did I do? Now, again, just by chance, I happened to be going into module 4 of my apprenticeship as we were going through all of this. And for those of you that have done module 4, the title is Leading Innovation and Change in Sales. So again, this is where, for me, doing the learning at the same time as living the situation could not have come at a more timely moment, because everything we were learning about, all the models, all the advice on how to lead through change, I could then take and apply that to the team that I had. We were only 3, but, nevertheless, I had to make sure they had a vision. So what I decided to do was run a workshop with them called Moving Forward in 2021. To start with, obviously, I only wanted to do it with the 3 individuals. I felt it very important that I couldn't just bring all the teams together to start with. We had to obviously build on moving forward together as 3. And this is where really the learnings from the module came in. And this is one of we've talked about models today. This is a change model that I used by Bridges that I felt, there's lots of change models out there, again, you all may know. This was the one that best described or best helped me talk my team through what we needed to do to move forward. Because, of course, the phase 1, which we spent a long time talking about on many calls, again, we couldn't meet face-to-face, unfortunately. We spent a long time talking about how we felt, what the end was like, and letting go, because, of course, they'd lost their colleagues after, we'd been a very close team for the past 2 years. So we talked through that phase, and then we also talked about what was next, because you don't then immediately go, okay, I'm over that, let's jump to what is next. And I do think sometimes, and I've seen it with other changes in my organisation, we don't deal and help our employees through change as well as we should. When there's a restructure, we kind of go, here it is, we've done it, right, next. And it doesn't give that person, and probably going back to the Great Resignation, this is how people feel engaged, because it's more than just, let's move on. It's talking through how we process that. So next was the neutral zone for them. And again, it was talking about, how do we even think about moving forward? I couldn't just go to moving forward because we had to talk about, what is it? Change is really scary. Again, this was unprecedented, of course, but any organisation facing change, especially if it's, a new thing at work, we really are resistant to it in our brains. So we have to talk through it. And I think, Louise, you've shown this today. I showed this every week on my team calls. This was the very first slide every week. Because, of course, this all happened in March 2021. The pandemic was still going on. There was still no end to it at that point in our sector. So I showed this every week just again to put it in perspective that there's only so much we can control. Let's think about where the vision and what we want to do. And I think it was also important. I know the title is Keep Your Salesforce, how did I keep them engaged? Actually, first and foremost, I had to make sure people's mental health was okay. I mean, this was just such a devastating thing. It was also making sure they were okay first before we could start talking about the vision moving forward. So how did we move forward together? I mentioned that I brought everyone together as a team. We also brainstormed separately about what could we do to be ready for growth. We all knew at some point this would end. We didn't know when at that point. I had 6 people in the team again. I think it goes without saying, anything where you're keeping your sales teams engaged involves communication. That communication could also include, even if you don't know, just tell people you don't know. You don't know, quite simply. And I didn't know. Sometimes leadership were making decisions and we wouldn't find out till the day before. So just say you don't know, but as soon as you do. So, probably 3 times a week, I would just put off-the-cuff calls in the diary to say, right, okay, this is what I found out. We had that new beginning. So these were some of the questions, some of the practical things I talked through with the team. We had no resource. So one of the other things to talk about was no clients were really coming out to RFP. No clients actually wanted to buy during that period. Why would you buy business travel? No one's traveling. And a lot of people even if we were in a bid process, they put it on hold. So we talked about, even if someone does come out to bid, how do we do that? Because we had no resource. So we were doing a lot of DIY. Obviously, I had 6 people lost, so we were allocating pipeline. So there was a lot of practical things we were doing to think about, whilst, quite honestly, the leadership were just focused on, saving the company. We just thought, actually, we're going to have our own vision as a team. There's loads of bullets on here, which I won't read through. But as you can see within those, there's practical things. And again, because the human brain is very short term, we couldn't focus on this is what we're going to do in a year's time. It had to be, what can we do here and now today? But I always weaved in the mental health aspect of make sure you keep talking, make sure you reflect on every day, the good and the bad. So it was always that mixture of practical things that we're going to do for a vision for the future, but also made it about them. This obviously was my favourite in terms of what have we already done. Now, I don't know about you, but during the pandemic, I did drink a lot of wine. I was working for business travel, which was imploding, homeschooling. But, again, it was just important. And the bit at the top, obviously, is the most important. We became really agile. I had to keep reminding my team, all 6 of them, you're really, what you have done and achieved during the last 12 months is amazing. And you're really resilient. And let's just keep that growth mindset because it's so hard not to have it. One of the other things I felt was really, really important to do was revisit my own companies with the team, our values and beliefs. Because again, when we all went into this virtual world and lockdown, one of the things that is most important when you go into an office is you connect with people that you don't see very often, all of the things we know and that have been widely discussed now for a long time about why it is important to have that human connection. So when we speak to clients about why you chose CWT, when we're selling, and they always say the people, so to sit and go through our values and our beliefs almost as a company and remind people of why we do what we do, and it is, we connect humans. We are just that vessel to make sure that people can go on and do their business, mainly salespeople, I have to say. I also would send out little anecdotes. I don't know if any of you saw this during the lockdown. This is Charlie McKinsey. So I would just every so often just put on, send over WebEx Teams or emails, just little reminders that it would be okay. And goodness, yes, the storm was long. Will it pass? We know it did pass, but we did have to hold on for quite a while. So I'm probably going to come to, this is where my case study for what Simon has just presented. So I've talked a lot just a minute ago about how I kept the Salesforce engaged, how we had a vision. Did it work? No, not for all of the salespeople, not for all of those 6 people, unfortunately. So I mentioned I had 6 people. During then the rest of 2021, as we got to September 2021, I had 4 people resign out of 6. So I'd already made 9 redundant. I had another 4 resign. And it was basically only one of those stayed within the travel sector. Everyone else moved sectors. So I think, the learning for me here is it doesn't matter what you do sometimes, as long as you do something, but you can't always, the headwinds were just too great in the situation we were in. The other thing you see there, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Chapter 11. So we're a US headquartered company. So in the September 2021, this is what triggered the Great Resignation really in the sales teams. In September 2021, we went into Chapter 11, which is after 9/11, a lot of the airlines went in. Ours was a bit different because we were transferring ownership from our current owners to new owners. We were only in Chapter 11 for 24 hours, and we needed it to get our debt written off, which at the time was around $1.1 billion. So we did get half of that debt written off. But it's a normal thing in the US. In Europe, it's seen as bankruptcy. So the headwinds I had against me with the team leaving were the global pandemic was still going on in 2021. People still weren't traveling. CWT all of a sudden wasn't even the clients that were saying, come and see us, they weren't buying from the salespeople. And as positive as you can be, and salespeople, this is the challenge with, I think, the Great Resignation if you were in travel. If you're a really positive salesperson and you're not selling, of course, you're going to go somewhere else because you're not selling and money isn't the driver, but still, they weren't earning their commissions. As you can see there, commissions were still paused. So yeah, it was a long period that we went through, but we are gaining momentum. So now we're we're nearly at the end of 2022 now, and business travel spend is back up to 70% of 2019 levels. So we've almost gone now the other side, as we've seen in all sectors, but particularly in travel, we have huge labour challenges because all of a sudden it was like the tap turned on and everybody then wanted to travel again. So we have a big recruitment drive, including in the sales team. So I'm increasing my team again. I'm back up to a team of 6 people. So I've recruited 2 people within the last year. And we're winning business again, which is great. We've overcome those perceptions. Partly, our new owners have been amazing. We've had a $350 million investment. We've done all the things that had to be put on pause during COVID. So they now have, something good to go out and sell. Of course, there are still challenges. You can see on the left-hand side, every sector is dealing with those. Travel, again, I will always say, happens to be affected most by normally when there's things happening in the world because people just stop traveling. And I think what I'm seeing now, though, is my next role is how do I keep the future Salesforce engaged? Because priorities have shifted and we've seen it. Employees expect so much more from us as employers. Flexible working is a given. What are you going to do for me as an employee? What are you doing for my well-being? How are you going to look after me? And I need to take all of that into a consideration, especially when I'm out there looking at the professional sales world of who wants to come and work for CWT, because our values and beliefs are really intrinsically linked, as we know. And I think that's become even tighter. People want to work for a company that they feel they've got a purpose and they can do something for. So I think, whilst I did a lot, and I'll continue to use what I've learned during my apprenticeship around managing change and leading through change, I think that's going to evolve a lot because, as we know, the only constant is change. So yeah, I think there's a lot to do still in the future. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Hi Joe, Steve from BT. We're on the same cohort.
We were.
One of the things I took was fantastic learning from Consalia. I'm sure you remember it, and I'm sure lots of others do in the room, but stop, start and continue. So my question to you is, what would you continue from your change of practice?
So what I do continue is having those, because I'm managing people in another country now as well, but we definitely continue those meetings and the reflections in terms of managing change, because there's still a lot of change going on in our business. So I'm still continuing a lot of what I've just talked about that I did in the early months preceding after the redundancies. So yeah, I'm still carrying on that, still showing the circle of influence, circle of concern on a regular basis. It's just, it's so prevalent to everybody.
Hilary from Consalia. Hi, Joe. What's been the biggest learning from your journey? I mean, you, particularly in the industry you've been in, you've had a really tough time of it.
Yeah.
What's your biggest personal learning from those years?
Yes, I mean, like Nick, I was very much a salesperson with no training, and you're the best salesperson in the UK, so we're going to give you the leader. So the biggest learning for me was actually learning how to be a leader, and it just whatever you can call it, fate, that I happened to start it at the time of a dramatic change at work. So, as well as managing the change, it also helped me to be a much better leader through going through the apprenticeship whilst I was actually working. And of course, not everyone will go through such a change as I did, but yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, and the biggest realisation that there are so many leaders out there with no support or training. That is the biggest thing for me. It should be a given.
Why did you stay?
Very good question. Well, my first answer would be I've actually been at the same company since I was 21. So I've been there 25 years nearly. And I've, got a family. So at the time, during going through all of it, it wasn't the right time to move. My other very honest answer was that I was doing my master's degree that was paid for by or supported by the apprenticeship. So honestly, that was my biggest goal when we were going through all that was, to complete that. So, yeah, okay. That was one of the reasons. And it is, as I said, we've got new owners. Things are looking bright now. But yeah, never say never. I'm hoping, again, having, when you do something like this, you do it also to further your career. So
yeah, very good. Well, thank you so much, Joe.